Let's talk about how to handle alerts in Selenium WebDriver. Alerts in Selenium WebDriver are actually really easy. The API is super nice and you should have no problem handling it. Let's go ahead and navigate to this URL and I will show you exactly what's going on with the alerts. So here we are on this web page. We can click each of these buttons and get different alerts that pop up, and we will handle them in different ways. So I'm going to find this very first element, looking for this text, which is going to click this JS alert. And by the way, I wanted to throw out something cool here and very key that many automation engineers don't know, and that's the use of normalizing space whenever looking for text, because actually it's possible that the spaces here may not be totally correct whenever elements render. There may be two spaces or stuff like that. So you need to use this functionality, this method from XPath that will help you to make sure that the spaces are normalized with this string. It actually makes your locators more stable. Anyway, so I use that. You can see that example of that there. We're going to find it, and then we're obviously going to click it. So let's go ahead and do that. Now let's look over. See that? We've got a JavaScript alert. Now, the annoying thing about JavaScript alerts is that whenever they happen, you can't interact with the HTML. Look, I'm trying to right click. I'm trying to click here. You can't do anything with the HTML until the alert is dismissed. And that's where alert handling comes in handy. So in order to dismiss this alert, it's actually really easy. Use driver.switch_to.alert.dismiss. Let's step over that. Boom. Look, alert is gone. Let's click on the next alert, which will have a JS confirm. So let's click that. And so now we have this alert. You can see now this alert has a cancel button and an OK button. And so in this case, we can accept the alert by using the accept method. So let's go ahead and step over that. And now the alert is going to be gone. See, alert is gone. And now we're going to get a JavaScript prompt that will allow us to input text. So let's find that and click that button, which will then prompt a new JavaScript alert that we can see looks as such. And you can see it has input text and it has two buttons. Now, the other thing that's important here is you can actually store a JavaScript alert into an alert object that comes from the WebDriver API. So we're getting this alert here actually returns an alert object, which we then store in our input alert variable. And now we can just use this alert object to perform multiple operations, such as getting the text, which would then returns, look, I am a JS prompt. That's the text that's coming from here. And then we can send keys. Look, mom, I can automate alerts. And then we can accept it. And then when we go back to our HTML page, we can see that we entered, look, mom, I can automate alerts. Congratulations. And we finished this test as such. That's all there is to alerts. Let's talk about managing files and cookies for some advanced browser interactions. So the very first thing that I need to say is testing file upload and download is actually not necessary when it comes to automated software testing. We have thousands of requirements and thousands of test cases, and doing this functionality through Selenium simply doesn't make sense. Yes, it's possible, but there are more stable and faster ways of doing it. In fact, you can see a recommendation here from selenium.dev themselves. Because, for example, a file download is simply an HTTP GET on a link. For example, if you go to this URL right here and you try to download any one of these files, every single one of these points to a link, right? You can see that each one of these is a link. And so if we actually want to validate that this file is downloaded, all we have to do is check that the link is correct. And the click itself, using Selenium to click on this link, is likely not to be broken. In fact, if clicking a link doesn't work, it means that it's broken for the entire web. And so the click is absolutely pointless. It's a waste of time, not only for our coding efforts, it's a waste of time in terms of test execution time, and it's also a waste of time in terms of maintenance. Only the link itself can actually be broken, because what happens is this file right here can be disjointed from the correct link. You might click it and get an invalid status code. And so that's the only thing we want to check. Validating that we can actually type in a file name in here, click the save button, that it actually appears on our operating system is not needed to be tested, because this is a native operation of our operating system. And Windows and Mac have already tested that their operating systems are working for us. And so we don't need to test this. There is absolutely no way that this can break unless Windows or Mac introduces a bug into their system, in which case this will be broken for everybody using that operating system anyways. So the correct way to test the file download is already, as I have mentioned, is using an HTTP client. So in this example, I am showing you using rest assured, okay? And so you can see that I've set a file path of the file that I expect to exist. Then we do a get, an HTTP get. If you're not familiar with web requests and responses, that's no problem. That's totally outside of the scope of this course. But if you do want to know how to test it correctly, this is how you do it. And so then you do a get on that URL, and then you get back your response. And then the response should be a 200 status code. If this file doesn't exist, for example, you might get something like a 400 status code that says, hey, file not found. And so in which case, you know that clicking that link would have been broken because the file doesn't exist. Let's also talk about cookies. Cookies are pretty important, especially in terms of when it comes to like logging in or setting user preferences. And you can do it several ways in Selenium WebDriver. We can use our cookie builder to build up a cookie that we want to set. So for example, if we wanted to drop an authentication cookie to log in as a user, we can build it up like this by giving it a name and a value. We can add all of these different properties here and set them to whatever we need to set them before dropping that cookie in the browser. Once we have it, we can add the cookie to the browser using the add cookie method. If we want to make sure that we have a cookie in the browser, we can use the get cookie named method and simply provide the name of the cookie. And if we want to assert that we got the correct cookie, all we have to do is use the get value method, and that will let us know whether the cookie we have set the correct cookie or not. And of course, if you want to delete all the cookies in the browser, you can, because sometimes cookies can actually impact the behavior of a browser. For example, you might have a cookie from some advertiser that has been dropped on your browser, in which case you might get certain advertisements, or even maybe your website might change in certain ways. And so it's sometimes important to delete all cookies so that users aren't logged in, or so that the application behaves as expected. Let's go ahead and put all of our knowledge to the test with a really fun exercise. So what I've done here in the project is created a WebDriver Methods exam where you will find all the code samples. And what I want you to do is, in this WebDriver Methods exam, create a setup and a teardown, just like we have been doing before. And we're going to do several tests here. In the first test, I want you to navigate to this URL, which you can see here on the right-hand side. I want you to focus on this element right here. So you can see that when I put my cursor in here, it gets focused like this, and this orange outline comes, and then I want you to assert that that element is focused. And I gave you the selector right here using a CSS selector. We want to start practicing those more often. Okay? Next, I want you to navigate to this URL. Then you're going to set a cookie using this button. Okay? Then once you set the cookie, you're going to get a cookie name token. In fact, let me show you where to analyze the cookies. So you can come here and then come to application. And in our application, we will see cookies. You see we have a cookie from example.cypress.io. And you see we have this cookie name token, right? So you're going to get that cookie name token and you're going to assert that it has a value of ABC123 or 123 ABC. Next, you are going to come to this page right here. You're going to scroll to the bottom of the page using a JavaScript execute command. This command is really useful for scrolling through pages. It's actually also very useful for visual testing. And since you've never done these commands before, and it does take some Googling, what I did is I actually provided you the command you want to use. So you'll use this one with the JavaScript executor, and then after you'll want to do a thread.sleep for 1,000 seconds. And this method always forces you to throw a interrupted exception. So you will just need to do this exact line of code. And in fact, if you use your IDE, it will guide you into it and force you to do it. Finally, instead of scrolling to the bottom, now we're going to scroll to the top, doing pretty much the same thing as scrolling to the bottom, but it's reverse. So you can see here we're doing the negative of that. So you want to scroll down again, and then you want to thread sleep for 1,000 milliseconds afterwards. And that's pretty much it. Give that a shot. When you come back, we will see how you do. Okay, so let's analyze this exercise here. So what I've done at the very top is I've created 3 fields: a driver, an element, and this field called JavaScript Executor. I'll show you exactly how we use that. And this is just so we can reuse it in each one of our tests. Okay, obviously in our setup, I am creating a brand new Safari driver. And if you remember from previous lessons in your own Mac, Safari driver actually doesn't even require a WebDriver manager. So we can just simply use it. Next, I'm using this command here to maximize the window. Now, you didn't have to have this command, but I actually strongly recommend it for all automation. Having a window of the browser in a constant state all the time will make your test automation drastically more stable. So you should start doing this in all of your test automation and making sure that the window is maximized. And then over here, you can see that I'm simply setting the JavaScript executor to this field right here so that I can use this instead of having to repeat these 2 lines of this line of code everywhere. I'm just going to be using this JavaScript executor. It's just a way to minimize the code. And then the teardown is just simple driver.quit. So now in the very first test in our actions, let's go ahead and run it, and you will see that it passes. So hopefully you saw it there very briefly, how I did highlight the element. The test did pass. And of course, you can pause the video to make sure that it did highlight. And here, it was pretty straightforward. So we are actually just finding the element with the CSS selector that I gave you. And in fact, let's take a look at that page. Just so you better understand exactly what's going on here. So if we come here and inspect this, what I want you to notice is, right, this element is the one highlighted, and this is the one that has a style change, right? So let me refresh this page again. So you can see that right now, this field right here has no style change because it's not focused, right? And if we do decide to focus it by doing this, you can see that now it has a style of color orange that has been added to it. And so that's actually the part that we were supposed to check. So we got that element, we moved to the element and did a click. We could have just as easily done a driver.findElement and then just do a click on it. That would have been the same thing because it would have focused it. And then all we had to do was find that element that I just showed you, which was this one, and check it, that its style contains this. So you can see that we used XPath here like this, and then we got its attribute style, right? Because this is the attribute that we want to retrieve, and then that it contains that color. And so that was that. Next one is the cookies one. The cookies one, we just navigate to the command, to the URL, and then I got the cookies locator using this right here, another CSS locator. We can pull this page up and inspect it as well. So if we scroll down and take a look at this, see how it has this set a cookie portion of the class. And so that's exactly what we used. And actually, I'm realizing that we don't even need this part right here. We could have probably just done that. And then we just click it to set the cookie. And so then once that happens, let's go ahead and check that out. So in fact, I'll show you my application right now. You can see that cookies, there is only this one, okay? And so, well, and actually it doesn't matter because running on this will not change anything. But if we do click this button and then refresh, you can see that now I have two cookies, this one, right? So that works, and then that's what we're checking here. And so what we can do is execute this and make sure that it passes. And the way we're getting the cookie name token, right? Here's the cookie name. And then we're checking that it has a value of 123 ABC. Here's its value. Let's give this a run. There you go. Test was successful. Let's go to the next one. In this one, to scroll to bottom, I basically gave you the answer. All I really wanted you to do was use the JavaScript executor.execute script command, and it was just passing in the exact same string that I gave you and then doing a thread.sleep afterwards. Nothing special about this one. Let's give this one a run and you will see it scrolling through the application, scrolling to the bottom. And as I said, this will be very useful for you for visual testing, because in visual testing, what's going to happen is elements will not be rendered until you scroll through them. So this is the way you're going to be able to do that. And then this one was a little bit trickier because how can you scroll to the top if you didn't scroll to the bottom? So here I was expecting you to think a little bit and realize that first you need to scroll down and then you can scroll up. So let's run this one to make sure that it works. So you'll see it scroll down and then scroll back up. There it is. That's it. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Hopefully you did okay. And now you have some really useful code that you can use for your future test automation.